Hey, Spanish Fork, thank you for joining us on our weekly river update. I'm Public Information Officer Nick Porter, joined by City Manager Seth Perrins once again. This is kind of fun.
It is fun. It's good to give information, hopefully answer questions that the public has, and this has been a great format to do that, and hopefully the public's finding value in what we're doing.
I hope so. I think it's helpful for us as well. So tell us first, Seth, what happened last week?
Last week, in this meeting, if you will, in this update, we talked about the river was going to kind of hold still until the weekend and start to go up as we got to warmer temperatures. That's almost exactly what happened, with one exception, and that was on Sunday when we thought it would start to go up because of the temperatures. It actually went up quite a bit because of rain event, raining up in the mountains, and that's always something that becomes a challenge for us as we look at high water flow. Any kind of rain up in the mountains can increase the flow in the river much more than say a snow melt on a typical day might do. And so we saw that on Mother's Day, and we've had a lot of high flow ever since then. It's about down to where it should be based on the snow melt now, but happy to report that the river behaved in many ways like we expected it to.
Meaning that the water got in and out of Spanish Fork, the sandbags worked,
yeah.
We didn't have any flood damage?
Yeah, during the week, especially on starting Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, we've had a handful of locations along the river where the sandbags have been in use, if you will. Water has touched the sandbags, and the sandbags have held the water back exactly as they were designed and exactly as hoped. Some of our low-lying areas along the trails and in a few places on some private property, no homes along the river have really been threatened yet by high water. But the sandbags where they've been touched have worked perfectly.
Well, great news. That means that all the preparations have
gone well.
Have worked.
Yeah.
So one thing that we also did is we had staff, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at especially our low bridges, Leland Bridge and I-15 Bridge, right, watching for debris and preventing any kind of buildup.
Yeah, we've divided the river up into 12 sections, and an employee, again, we call them river captains, they monitor that half mile to maybe 3/4 of a mile. And Sunday evening, as we saw the water levels start to rise up in the canyon, knowing that it will be an hour or two before we start to see those flows here, they deployed out, started watching the river. A handful of them checked locations throughout the night. So these great employees were out much of Monday night and much of Tuesday, or I guess it'd be Sunday night, Monday morning,
right,
and then Monday night, Tuesday morning, watching these high flows and how the river is performing. And happy to report that all the things that they found were good. They identified a few concerns, as they do typically, and in the internal setup that we have, they were able to report those, and we could deal with them. And no incidents from that, but good findings and good work coming from it.
And since Sunday, when we had the highest we've had this year, we've kind of held steady. We've decreased a little bit. There's a downward trend, but it's still running as fast and as high as it has all season.
Yeah, it's been this is ideal. If you can get to a high level of water flow and the banks can handle it, but then keep it there and let the water come down, right? As much water as we can handle safely is great, because inevitably 90-degree weather is going to get here, and the sooner it gets here with more snowpack up above, then the higher the flows get and the more likely we'll have issues. So honestly, we have had probably the perfect weather scenario. And as we look at some graphs, you can see that the melt has started. We're now some 5 weeks into the melt, and that is exactly what you want. A good 6 to 8 week melt means that you're going to experience what we've been experiencing so far, which is high water, but not flood water. And so far, it's just been perfect, and that's Mother Nature giving us a tremendous help.
So this graph is the 8,900 foot elevation. So the high elevation measurement says we're sitting right at 17 snow water inches. I think last week when we were here, we were just over 20.
Yep.
So 3 inches in a week.
At the high elevation,
good news.
yeah. At the high elevation, that's a great number because it's not too much. and but it continues downward, and every day that graph moves down, we're going to start to see it probably come down 1 inch to 2 inches a day. But as that comes down, we just have less and less snow up in the mountains, and fewer chances of a flooding event, right? So we don't need to look at that other graph, but I'll just say the mid-level graphs, the snow's gone.
It's just about zero.
And so that's fantastic. We now are only watching the high elevation, and it's there's less square footage, right? There's less acreage that has snow up at that high, and so the volume of snow to come down, although it's deep, there just isn't as much. And so I think we're in a great place for the prognosis right now is looking really, really good. We're super happy about that.
So one graph we've shown and we'll show again now is the forecast graph. We've talked about, this is what the state hydrologist puts out as far as what we think may come down. And this is a kind of a steep downward, right? Kind of getting to the end of snowpack melt.
Yep.
How do you feel about this graph? Do you think it's accurate?
Well,
this is accurate as it can be.
Yeah,
right?
This is the best graph that we have. We're so grateful for this kind of information. And as you look back through the history of this is no different than a meteorologist giving you a 5-day, 7-day, 10-day forecast. Is it going to be spot on? No, but absolutely the trends are helpful, and this gets adjusted probably multiple times a day. The downward trend is exactly what we hoped for. If I were doing this, I'd probably raise that line a few points, because you can see how the high peaks are a little bit higher than where it is. But as long as those high peaks aren't above 2,800 cubic feet per second, then I think we're sitting pretty dang happy. And so the downward trend for us is really exciting, and the peaks, we'll just keep watching the peaks. And as you watch this on Friday, as we see this through the weekend, we're going to get a little bit warmer, and our expectations are that we'll still have peaks, just like we always do in the morning, but probably every day's peak is going to be a little bit less than the day before, and that's a good sign.
And the warm evenings keep the melt going, and it's maybe not as volatile as...
Yeah, it's interesting to watch that, right? And so as people watch the graph of the water flow, you're going to see a lot more consistency in those, rather than that river tide that we've been talking about that has really high swings. Now it's going to be a lot more consistent.
So let's talk about this other graph that is a tool we've used. We haven't brought it on our weekly update yet, but I think it's a good tool to kind of explain how we read this, what this means to us. Can you walk us through what we're seeing?
Yeah, this changes. First of all, this graph changes 2 or 3 times a day. And again, these are a lot of experts looking at how they view the snowpack and the melt. This week is almost over, but it's got us still at or slightly above that 2,000 mark, and we'll see that for the next couple of days. But as we move through the weekend, you can see some different colors, and for our purposes, we go off of the highest mark on this graph. But those different colors actually relate to the table just off to the right that say the chance they believe it will be at that level. So the solid blue that makes up the majority of that graph, they say is 90% chance, right? And then the very top of that works its way through the legend of information, and there's, in their estimation, a 10% chance. For our purposes, we've always operated on what's the most it can be, and that's what we need to be ready for and capable of, because it's just too late. If
Right.
It's happening and you say, oh, geez, we should have been paying attention to that 10% mark. But that's something that we've been looking at. And again, that graph tells me that in the hydrologist's estimation, the snow melt rise in water is really coming to an end. That's a good thing. The high water is not coming to an end, but the rise in water is. And so, as somebody's looking at this, they might say something like, "Well, mission accomplished." And I would say, slow down just a little bit. We still have significant high water in the river, and we're going to have high water through, I would say, probably through the month of June, as this high elevation, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 feet snow, slowly comes off. we'll still have high water. And there are three things that we're looking for specifically as we watch the river now, as we see the magnitude of water diminishing. So we probably won't have snowmelt that brings the water up into flood range, but as it continues at the high flow, erosion is and has always been our biggest concern, because erosion can be below the river banks, but it can still chew out the river bank. So it might be 5 feet below the river bank, but the velocity on a bend, it can chew out and move the river channel 10, 15, 20 feet.
Right.
And in history, not necessarily along our river, but in other rivers down in St. George, for example, you see homes fall into the river because of erosion. So that's our number one watch with this high water. The second one is debris, and we'll show you an image here in just a minute of the debris. And then the third one is rain. So just like we saw over the weekend, we'll watch for it with water, the river flowing at 1,800 cubic feet per second, and you have a rain event up in the mountain. If you add another 800 CFS to that, we're all of a sudden higher than we've ever been, and it's rain influenced. And so nobody's ready to say mission accomplished as long as we have some of these factors still in place. But so far, the message is we've been able to thread a needle perfectly, if you will, and what a great story so far.
And I think we have this picture of the debris, I think maybe is one that is the most visible, right? Erosion, we monitor, and we've been able to use a lot of GPS and surveying equipment to monitor that as well, and some of our drone footage helps show that. But I think it's maybe something that's visible, at least to the public, is this debris that builds up. And this image is crazy, because it's kind of a floating dam. You've seen the collection of this wood and fallen trees.
Yeah, and we talked about this in a previous update. As a big piece of debris comes down, because the water is up into the channel where there are trees and other impediments, that floating dam, right, that really big tree will hang up on something. And as it grabs something, it inevitably will grab something else and something else. And now we've been watching, for example, maybe that it's going to hit a bridge and back up there. Well, maybe a quarter mile upstream, it's snagged on a tree and is now beginning to collect other debris. Now it's damming the river, and the water level maybe rises behind it. Worse, it starts to push the water into an edge, you wouldn't have expected it to flow there, and it could start to erode. So this is a great shot of something that has been pulled out of the river today. And I love the root ball on that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And as you look at the root ball, let's jump to that image right there. You're looking at the root ball on that tree. And what that tells me is that tree was probably upright yesterday, right? And as the river eroded some bank where that tree was, it pulled the tree down, and now you've got this fantastic root ball that's some 6 to 8 feet in size, and that can cause a lot of problems. You see it's right there, right below it are some sandbags, so it gives you a sense that we pulled that out right at a low-lying area of our river, and had this been left to its own devices, you probably could have seen some issues maybe caused in the river. But river captains and people watching the river, we were able to watch this actually come down and look for it, and we had eyes actually looking for this specific debris because we knew it was coming. And when we found it, pulled it out of the river as best our crews could, and they're chopping it up right now.
And we've had a few really good catches.
Yeah.
We'll show you, here's another video. This log is moving, and we're still able to grab it before. This is right under the Leland Bridge, and our operator is able to catch that and pull it out. I think they call these canoes.
They do, yeah. They refer to these as canoes, and you better believe that the operator that's in that piece of equipment really, really wants to catch it. And he was pretty jazzed about catching that. And as you watch it come out, you realize that thing's some 12 to 14 feet long, maybe longer. And yeah, great catch just as they pulled that out.
So in our last few minutes, let's talk when is this going to be over? When are we going to clean up the sandbags? When are we going to be able to be in the river again?
So I think that question is kind of nuanced, and I'll break it up into a few parts. First one, when are we going to be able to be in the river again? Our message is stay out, and it may be another 6 weeks. before residents can get in the river. And that's a little scary to think about. Number one, because school is going to be out in a week, right? And kids have historically on these warm days, especially if they live close to the river or if they experience the river, hey, I want to go play in it. Parents, you just have to teach your kids stay out. It's just not safe. We continue to see pictures and get reports of kids playing in the river, along the riverbanks. And we have done so well in many regards. And it would be a tragedy if the message changed because we lose one of our little ones into the river. So please, when can we get in the river? When the water gets down to some level, 300 CFS and below. The speeds and depths are just too much, and then the dirtiness of the water. So it's going to be a while, probably July 1st.
That's probably when it's going to be clear even, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't see the bottom, how deep it is, what's in it, the debris.
Yep.
So that's kind of a good indication, you'd say?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I think a question that residents are going to start wondering is when are we going to be able to, when should we take the sandbags out of our yard? There are a couple of dozen residents that have sandbags in their backyard, and we're developing the final plans of our debris removal, and we'll put that out to them probably in the next week or so. And we've already been testing the waters, if you will, taking a pulse on how many people would like some sand, and this will be good sand if it hasn't been touched by the river. And maybe this is going to be a great thing. Residents can get some sand for different parts of their yard or whatever they might be doing. And so we'll put that out there and get that information to the residents, and they'll see. Those that have sandbags, we'll communicate with them directly on what to do, and then to the residents at large, we'll communicate about when free sand and other opportunities might exist.
And then will there be any sand moving, before it all comes down? Is it going to all come down at the same time, or are we going to take some sandbag walls down first?
I think that's a great question. I would imagine that some sandbags will stay longer than others. We haven't needed, the water hasn't reached all locations the same. And so we know where the water has touched sandbags, and I would imagine we will want to keep sandbags at those locations a little while longer. So we've got some internal measurements where we're watching and where we're comfortable pulling sandbags off of our low-lying locations, and we'll consult with those residents that have it on their property as well. Of course, it's their call in the end, but we'll consult with them and give them the advice that we have. But I think it'll be staged. I think it'll be iterative, right? That you might take it out from here and there, and then maybe these other locations last.
So we'll have some more information on that next Friday in our update. And if you see walls coming down and sandbags being removed, we're not saying it's over, but we think that snow melt's low enough, and we know where our trouble spots have been, and the sandbags are in use, and we'll keep those there. So it doesn't mean it's over.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can get in it, because it's still not safe.
Yeah,
Any last thoughts, Seth?
Just adding on to that, we've been in this heightened stage of readiness, of awareness now for about 3 weeks. And that gets tiresome, right? Personally, I'm ready to move on, right? Let's get on to the next thing. And it becomes easy for us to get complacent. And so just adding maybe a level of warning that as we start to transition away from the sandbags, that does not mean the river is safe and that all is well. So just keep that in mind, please, and again, stay away from the river.
And I will just mention that on Tuesday at City Council meeting, the City Council extended the emergency declaration from Mayor Mendenhall at least for another month through about the end of June, and that may continue if needed. But I think that's kind of the timeline we're looking at. We're looking at the end of June, the first part of July, when this is all said and done. Yeah. There's still a ways to go. There's still those things we're monitoring: the erosion, the debris, the rain. That those are the wild cards in this game.
Every day that we've had the water like we've had, the chances of problems gets a little bit lower, right? Every day we win, just like I feel like we've won, yesterday and the day before. Every day that we win, we get that much closer to absolute success, which is what we're hoping for. But just because the percentage goes down doesn't mean the risk is zero. And we're going to be cautious until we get that risk at a level where we feel like we can really celebrate, and then I look forward to that day. I'm excited for that.
I think we all are.
Yep.
that's all for this week. We'll be back here next week with another update and some more of our sandbag and cleanup and removal process. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching. Thanks to Spanish Fork 17 for helping us put all of this together. You can find this and other information and the charts, the graphs, river cams on our website, SpanishFork.org/flood. We'll see you next time.